Hello and welcome to Makers of All, Master of None. Today we are going to make a custom cleaver sheath. So this cleaver was actually a Christmas gift from one person to another. And I failed to think of what to give to said person, so I just decided to tag along and give them a sheath to go with the cleaver. Initially I was going for a more traditional straight in and out design as I'm drafting here. Normal sheath would go in something like this. Maybe not that. So normally a sheath will slide in and slide out like this. But the interesting shape of the cleaver gets lost and covered in that, and it's not very interesting to look at. And the best way to do this is, I think, to have the bulk of as one piece, and then the rest of those two folds into this bit. So I decided to go with something more interesting with iteration 2 of the design. Right, let's cut it out and see. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. That would leave a button here or a strap and buckle here. That might be quite nice. And then a button here. Would be nice if you can fit the shape of this nicely with a separate piece. Can you try making this as I go along? So it fits something like that. 1, 2, 3. That might work. So the cleaver is going to go in at an angle, and the sheath comes with a top flap and a side strap. And that little hook should also stop it from coming out unintentionally as well. Right, let's see what leather pieces we have. We have a rough design. Got some black leather, some dark, some red. So the only piece I have big enough for the main piece is going to be this kind of color. That color, that color, this one. I used the cleaver to trace out the design so that it is a bit more accurate. I then used my wing divider to add some width and tolerance for sewing later. Now it's time to cut out the leather. Initially I opted for the main body of the sheath to be done in one piece and have it fold over to prevent the cleaver from cutting open the sheath through the seams. But after trying to do that, including a bit of scarfing down the center, it is still too thick and not giving me the look that I wanted. So I decided it was best at that point to make the main body out of 2 pieces. Now there is a scarf mark running through the bottom piece as I just cut it out that one big piece and make that the bottom piece, but it doesn't actually run that deep and that portion will be covered and glued. I also made a template of the blade as the shape has been giving me trouble all the way through, so that should help with the fitting and the shape of the sheath without the handle getting in the way. I used that to refine the shape of the sheath a bit. Then started cutting out the top piece using the back piece as a template.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
I did make a little bit of an error when making the other sides of the body, forgetting that I had to mirror the cut, but luckily I have enough material to just reshape it instead of having to cut out a new piece. After refining the shape of the sheath a bit, I was going to glue the 2 main pieces together. But I remembered just as I was about to apply some glue that I need to do all the other bits first, as there's no going back once I've glued the 2 main pieces together. So on the front piece I added a button so that the side strap can be buttoned in. as well as a little cutout slot so that the pattern on the blade can be seen without removing it entirely from the sheath. I then started work on the top flap, but as I was tracing it out and started cutting out the shape,
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
I realized I made a bit of a mistake, and it is the same mistake that I've made earlier, not remembering to mirror the pattern. Luckily I haven't gone too far into cutting the piece, so I still have enough material to make that top flap. And that's why it's always important to measure twice and cut once. I retraced the pattern, and after a couple of test fits, I got the top flap to the shape that I wanted it to be and decided on the length and the shape of the tab that is going to be attached to the back piece. The skiving session took a bit longer than expected, and I don't think I actually managed to skive more than half of the thickness of the leather, but it was just thin enough to fall over the edge without adding too much bulk. I then trimmed the shape of the top flap a little bit so that the side strap and the top flap can both fit over the top piece without overlap, and then added buttons to the top piece for the flap. So now that the pieces are ready for sewing, I beveled the edges and apply some tonical cream on the edges and the flesh of the leather. It was a bit difficult with the buttons already on the pieces, but it worked, so mental note for next time, prepare the leather first and then apply the buttons. To attach the bottom piece and the top flap together, I didn't want to just sew the outline of this square slash trapezium for the top flap and the bottom. You know that puzzle where you're supposed to join up 9 dots in a single line and the solution was to think outside of the box? I was thinking about how to do it and then realized it doesn't really matter because I can just hide the seams at the back. So here's what it looks like from the back. I'll show you the front in the video later. Why can't you bloody light up?
Oh Lord Jesus, it's a fire!
The fire rises.
Then comes gluing of the front and back body pieces, and I used my handy little clamp with some extra leather bits surrounding it to make sure there's no indentations from the clamp. The seam line there is intended to be a centimeter away from where the blade is, so after much hammering and sewing, I also thinned the strap as well to make it more uniform across, and also to hide the little cut that got there from somewhere and not sure where. So after I went back and trimmed the shape so it is more aesthetically pleasing. To add a bit of a personalized touch, I'm going to emboss the name of the recipient onto the top flap. I picked a font and printed out a couple of different sizes on transfer paper for a test fit. I used a spray bottle to moisten the leather, but it was actually a squirt bottle instead of a misting bottle, so it still got a bit too wet when I put the transfer paper on, but I managed even though I destroyed the transfer paper afterwards. I traced the outline, then used a swivel knife to cut into the leather. Normally what happens here is we are going to stamp out the lines, but the curves of the letters were a bit too small, so I first ran the larger end of the ballpoint to widen and deepen the cut before stamping the outer edge to kind of give it a bit of a highlight. To make it more subtle and hide the raw orangey flesh of the leather, I used some edge paints to attempt to cover those up. And that's pretty much it, just a layer of beeswax left to apply for protection, so let's have a look at the final results. It's not too bad, I guess. It functions as intended pretty much. With regards to the design, it's a little bit clunky to put in and out of the sheath as you need 2 hands. The top flaps do lift the top piece a little bit, so I probably would have been better off with the top piece still connected. I don't have any thinner leather or any tools to skive it consistently, which would have probably saved me a lot of time, especially on the top piece. The embossing of small details is new to me, and I'm happy to hear your tips and tricks below down in the comments on how to do it better. Give this video a like if you found it inspiring to make your own gifts or finally work on that one project you've been putting off for ages because you don't feel like you know what you're doing. It's okay and things will just work out. If you like making things, give me a follow to see more making content, and I'll see you on the next video on Makers of All, Master of None. Bye!